Hello and welcome to week 5 in the psychology of adulthood. And we encounter now a sort of terminology issue in terms of the stages of life. So we just went from adolescence into emerging adulthood, and now we have to use the term young adulthood. Like when I think of young adulthood, I'm thinking about, some of them are still in high school into that area, and that's the time that we've just been talking about. We're emerging adulthood, trying to squeeze that in there. The language really hasn't caught up, in terms of redefining this cycle of life, as Erickson had put it. But nonetheless, here we are. Let's talk about young adulthood as a stage that is sort of the culmination of the emerging adulthood, provided they have successfully transitioned into adulthood. The first stage of true adulthood we'll call young adulthood, and we're going to look at a couple notions about what that's like and what kind of changes in the person's life should we be seeing during that time. So the first one I want to talk about is cognitive changes. So a hallmark of adulthood, and it may occur early in the emerging adulthood, or it might occur at the end. It's not necessarily that everything like lockstep. Once you turn 28 or something like that. But a hallmark of cognitive development in adulthood is what is being referred to as post-formal operational thinking. Post-formal. Now, the formal operational thinking we get from Jean Piaget. If you've taken any of the developmental classes, you probably got the understanding that, you had sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, formal operational thinking straight from birth till adolescence. Formal operational thinking. Now, formal operational thinking has the capacity to think about abstract things, to be able to understand, although not always apply, the fact that what I do now will affect me later, that I can have future plans, that I can imagine things that I have not necessarily experienced in my life. I can imagine different livelihoods. That's why we start asking those big questions when somebody's in adolescence. They can do this imaginative kind of thing. It's the world, if you want to really put it down to cognitive muscles, it's the world of algebra. Algebra operates on the notion of being able to manipulate unknowns, variables, like 2a plus 3c equals d. Maybe some of you are starting to have heart palpitations as I say that, and I'm sorry about that, but those a's and b's and d's can mean anything. They can mean anything. So this kind of varied thing, algebra forces us, it's actually an exercise to develop the ability for abstract reasoning. Now, abstract reasoning, despite being the hallmark of science, it's the hallmark of creativity, it's all of these very, very wonderful aspects of it. It also has some limitations that settle it definitively in adolescence and not adulthood. And those differences are outlined in the theories regarding post-formal thinking. Now, the rules of post-formal thinking that make it distinct from regular formal operational thinking. First, absolutes are rare. The terms always, all, forever, never, and all that stuff, we learn as we get to adults, the world really doesn't work that way. It's pretty rare that something is always something. Experience teaches something very different. Simple solutions are often not the best solutions. Or they're, again, rare that there's a simple solution. There's lots of variables involved. And we see this actually, this is going to be a little weird. According to Piaget, I'm going to totally offhand this to him. According to Piaget, we don't need to operate in formal operational thinking for most of our lives. You and I, everybody in the room here, does not really need formal operational thinking very often. We only need that for special things. According to Piaget, most people have very, very limited formal operational thinking, let alone post-formal thinking. You don't really need it. The political discourse has always been targeted at individuals on its face to individuals who are not practicing formal operational thinking or post-formal thinking, because the solutions that politicians praise on their pulpits, all of them are simple solutions. Elect me, I'll take care of it. Do this, I'll do that. Raise the interest rate, lower the interest rate, that'll take care of everything. These simple solutions, they ignore the facts that these factors, there are many factors that contribute to the problems and solutions that exist within our country. So when we hear those things, if we practice post-formal thinking and we say, simple solutions just don't, a complex problem needs a complex solution. It's frustrating because sometimes we think, well, what if they just did this? It's never that simple. And that's a hallmark of adult level thinking that we're going to attach to young adulthood here. Practicality in problem solving, you have to actually really be able to do it. Flexibility. And here, one of the most important things when you're in dialogue, problem solving, trying to, come up with a solution for something, the fact that subjective factors, people's feelings and perspectives are important. It's not all facts, not all statistics. People have to feel right about that. So moving in that direction. And sometimes when we attach a simple solution to a strong emotion, that can be really destructive in terms of actually solving problems. People get really emotionally attached to their simple solution, and we've got problems. Okay, throughout this process of young adulthood, adulting continues on its way, and we begin to formulate throughout that emerging adulthood and into young adulthood, getting ready for that next one, affirming aspects of our personality. Think about James Marcia's theory, where we're looking at the options, moratorium, we're looking at the options, and then we select and we get into achieved identity. That moratorium, there's a lot of that going on in adolescence, emerging adulthood, young adulthood, and then we land and we say, this is who I am. Affirming adulthood, things like moving out, getting married, having a kid, all of those things that probably appeared on your list when you were doing our activity, when those things get solidified, those affirming aspects of your identity that say, I am now an adult. I also put, coming out, sexual orientation, and I went into that a little bit in the course book as well. These are kind of prominent public ways. You probably have your own ways, your own things that you did where you worked on it for a long time and then, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Now, granted, using Marcia's theory, now when we go into the next stage, start looking at middle adulthood, when we're at the longest stage, when we're, doing our life's work, I will return to Marcia and I'll say, now that you're all achieved, you got all these things in line, the tracks are in front of you, what if a crisis comes along? What if you lose your job, the economy changes, divorce, have kids unexpectedly, the company closes, all of these things, and we're shoved back into a state of foreclosure or sometimes even diffusion, confusion, back into moratorium when we thought we had all those things. We're going to return to that when things come along and challenge the affirmations that we've made that we are now an adult. Things can come along, or we can change our minds, or something comes along and says and throws us off the tracks. And we'll be talking about, we refer to those collectively as life crises. One of them is midlife crisis, but they happen all over the lifespan. So we'll get to that. But right now, you're making decisions as to who you are. I ask you to share about those. And finally, we get into one of our adult measures of personality. We use it with others, but this is kind of a good time to introduce you to the Big Five personality inventory, where we're looking. The first letters of all of them spell ocean. So there's openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion versus introversion. A is agreeableness, and N is neuroticism. So each one of those aspects of your personality are beginning to really formulate and gel. That you're settling down till a crisis comes along. And then those with high openness to experience, they can experiment and do all those things. So the possibilities are still out there, but in this young adult phase, we're going to be looking at changes in our cognition, affirmation aspects of our adulthood and identity, and then personality characteristics that are best measured at this point in our life in adulthood and beyond. For the discussions, for the discussion, singular, I'm going to have you discuss your affirmations. What happened in your life that affirmed that you are now an adult? Or this could be still in process. I saw some of the scores that people got. It's pretty rare. Absolutes are rare, right? It's pretty rare that someone's just going to get 100 on all of those. So a lot of people, well, I'm still working on it, still working on becoming an adult, and that's perfectly fine. And so, but are there affirmations along? Are you working on a specific one? Maybe you're in the school because the big one is I'm going to be a nurse, or I'm going to be a social worker. I'm going to, and that's when I'll feel affirmed in that piece of my identity. The assignment, I'm sorry, I looked down and read the wrong. What I just described is the assignment. Sorry about that. All the affirmations and all that, that's the assignment. The discussion is for you to give examples of post-formal thought. When have you had to apply absolutes are rare, simple solutions are rarely the case, subjective factors, practicality, flexibility, all this. When have you had to do that? When have you shown the fact that you think like an adult? All right. Sorry about that little confusion. And I look down. So that's our week. We just have one discussion on post-formal thinking and one assignment. We're going to be describing affirmation aspects of your life. And some of them could be under development. Okay, that's it for this week. So you take care. See you in the discussion boards. And I'll see you next time.